Hello, fellow YouTubers. It's J-Bo here once again, and we are going to do a simple video on probably two of the most popular 22LR pistols, excuse me, that you can buy for relatively cheap, which would be the Ruger Wrangler, which mine is in a kind of a desert tan color, which doesn't show up very well on here as being that, but that's what it is. And it's a very good quality firearm. I replaced the grips, I should say. There's two pieces, and you can usually tell the two-piece ones when there's a screw holding them together. And this is just fits me. I like it. Now I want to talk about the quality issues of these two pistols, and also the pros and cons of each one. And it's really important because I have two, maybe three videos on these, and they're very popular, and they're also very popular among people just learning how to shoot, or they purchase them for their kids. And it's one of those things that there's pros and cons to each one. And I'll try to run down from experience of using these. I have thousands of rounds through this one, and I also have a lot of rounds through this one. But I'll just start off by saying that I use the Heritage Rough Rider more than I do the Ruger Wrangler. Now that's just me. It doesn't mean it's a better pistol, because technically it isn't. And I'll explain what I mean. Now the differences are, the Ruger Wrangler is better made, tighter tolerances, everything fits seamlessly and perfect. These pins in here are easy to take out when you need to disassemble. The the ejector rod here is a very good quality. This entire pistol is a much better quality than the Heritage Rough Rider. Hands down, no argument at all. It's not even close. Even the weight and balance of it feels better. It just feels really good in your hand. And I did this off camera, but I'll do it to make you feel comfortable. It is unloaded. And I will check this one so people feel comfortable. Unloaded. All right, so the pros of this one is, like I said, it's built better. The pin in here is a better quality. It's actually spring-loaded with a little point inside. It's a better design. Put that back in. Locks in nice and easy. And when you want to load it, you just open the side gate, which has been opened and closed hundreds and hundreds of times, and it's still stiff. It's just made well, okay? Now, the hammer, you have a different design than your traditional single-action Army. So this is not a traditional single-action Army design, but it is single-action. So we have different designs. You pull the hammer back. It's got a really nice hammer pull. It's consistent. Everything, the timing with everything is perfect. You can dry fire it. Supposedly, I don't do it, but people online and gunsmiths and stuff, and they've said you can dry fire this, and I'm just not going to take their word for it, because I don't feel comfortable doing that because of the way the 22LR is. It strikes on the edge of the end of the shell bullet. Some people call it a bullet when it's not. It's actually a round, but you hit it on the edge of the round on the base for it to fire, rim fire, That's why it's called. It fires on the rim. So with no bullet in here and no round in here, the pin can strike the edge of the opening in the cylinder that the round goes into, causing damage from the firing pin in the cylinder itself. Then you start having misfiring problems. So I just make it a habit not to do it because you go to this one, you absolutely cannot dry fire this. So that's very important. So the other pros or cons, besides this being really made well, the trigger pull is really good. And the other thing that was good is, you see that front sight down in the notch? So the front and rear sight has a better, tighter tolerance. And the Heritage Rough Rider one is much more room and play for being sloppy. You have to be much more careful aiming. This one, you can get right on target. The top of the sight sits right in the notch like that. And they're all perfect. My brother Jim has one. I have one. And I didn't have to bend the front sight one way or the other to line it up properly to get good groupings where I want. Every Heritage Rough Rider I've had to bend the front sight to aim the pistol because you can't adjust the rear sight. So the Ruger is made better, okay? It's going to shoot for you out of the box from what I can tell. And if it doesn't, then I don't know what to tell you, but from our experience, that's the case. So those are the good things. The other thing is the finish. This is a nice Cerakote finish. And as you can see, I've used it a lot and it's not worn to death. I do have a scrape on the front barrel down to the metal, but that was my fault. That's because I put it down on something and scraped it when I was putting it down, and it had sand on the table because we shoot outdoors. It was windy that day and everything gets covered in sand. When you shoot outdoors in the sand, there's nothing you can do about it. If you leave your rifle case open, within 10 minutes you're going to have sand all over the inside of it, even if it's just a light breeze. So you kind of things you get used to shooting outdoors. So those cover the good things. These screws will loosen, but not like they do on the Heritage. You can either use Loctite on here, which is kind of a nuisance because every time you need to take it apart and clean it, you have to redo that. So I don't bother. I find it's easier just to do like Hickok 45 says and check your screws before you go shooting and just give them a tighten because they will loosen on you. These, not so much. But they use Torx bit, okay? It's the star-shaped, not the hex bit, okay? The Torx bit. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I'm not going to get a good zoom here to show you, I don't think. So you'll just have to deal with that. But what's really cool about that is you can get them tight without stripping the screw if you have a Torx bit kit, which you will need for this. But you have a regular flathead for the ejection rod. Now the ejection rod, this is the other downside of owning this. The cylinder doesn't click when you spin it. You can just spin it, okay? So when you open this to unload it, you have to make sure you're lining this up for the ejection rod. And if you don't, you see it just moved on me because the ejection rod slipped out of my hand. Now I have to go move it back. It's very cumbersome. You're not going to have very quick unloads and reloads with this. It's just not going to happen because even when you're loading. Now this is the best way to summarize this is somebody with a slide rule in their pocket and geeky glasses with their hair greased back and a white lab coat designed this gun. Some big fat hick, Billy Bob, drinking 12-pack of beer, designed this one. The tolerances are better on this. As you can see, if you look down here to put a round in, you don't have any room at all. You have to come in this way with a round and put it in there, and I don't know if you can see that, but it scraped some of the finish off because the tolerance is so tight. Some brands, you will feel resistance and you have to push them in. They fit very tight in a cylinder. Now that's good, but it's also bad. It's good for getting better accuracy when you shoot the gun. The round fits in the cylinder better. The cylinder actually matches up the cylinder gap. You see that? It's got a very good cylinder gap. And because of that cylinder gap, you don't lose much gases out the side, and you have better performance from the pistol. So all of these are drawbacks in my opinion, because I like the clicking. I like to be able to ratchet. Click, put a round in, click, put a round in, click. This, there's none of that. Sometimes it feels like you need to have 3 hands, okay? And then this gate is in the way when you're trying to load this, and you have to do it by feel, like this. After a while, you get used to it. You do. But if you get a casing that's stuck, you have to find some leverage, and you come over here to get more leverage, and then this moves, and now you're hitting the cylinder. It's very cumbersome for me. Obviously, you can tell I'm kind of used to it. Once you have a hole it goes through, you kind of get used to, but sometimes what will happen is you go past the one you were doing, and you do the next one, and then you go to, oh, I still have one in there. I got to redo that one. So those are the drawbacks. Now the other thing is you don't have the 3 or 4 click hammer. See, now you see what happened? I went part way, and then I put the hammer back. Now the hammer is locked. So to unlock that, you're going to move the barrel a little bit. So there's no half cock, but it does have a transfer bar safety. So that's good. It's a lot safer. This would be safer for a young person. So I feel if you're an experienced shooter, you can go with this. If you're not, maybe this will be better for you because you're not used to revolvers operating like the traditional 1800s single action army, which this is, the Heritage. So maybe this will be better for you, and especially if you have young people or children. It is safer. It has a better trigger pull. It's easier to pull the trigger on the Heritage. This is a little stiffer. So because you have to do all these extra things and be more precise, it probably would make it safer for young people. It's just my opinion. I'm not an expert, but that's what I would do if I had a child. These are definitely more dangerous if you're careless. So those are the pluses and the cons from this that I can think of off the top of my head. Now we'll do the Heritage real quick. Now this has the traditional 1, 2, 3, 4 hammer click. It does have a safety, but you have to make sure it's on. And when you load it, so you get that traditional single action where that is just going to line up every time. Regular flathead screws, much easier to maintain. Everybody has a flathead screwdriver. The other thing is you have more of a choice for grips on the Heritage website, although Wrangler has added a whole bunch of new style of grips, but I don't like how their wood grips look with this finish and this design. To me, it looks out of place. I went with synthetic. And the reason why I changed the grips on here is I have a big hand, and the regular grips that came with it felt too thin on my grip. So that's why I got a fatter grip. I don't have that problem with this. These are the ones that came with it. I like the patriotic design. And as you can see, the finish on here is nowhere near as good as the Wrangler. Not even close. But what does that do? That gives you a whole bunch of natural patina. It looks like a vintage handgun when it's only maybe 2 years old. And this will break down often. And that's not a flaw on Heritage Rough Rider, and you need to understand that. Single action revolvers used old technology like the trigger sear spring that goes for the bolt stop. So you have one part of it, the bolt stop, that comes up underneath and goes into these notches. That rotates the cylinder when you cock it, and also cocks the hammer, the trigger. So what happens is you have a Y spring in there. It's a flat spring. One prong goes on the bolt stop and one goes on the trigger. Actually, this would be the trigger and that's the bolt stop if you were looking down this way. Yeah. So what happens is the springs are constantly doing this, and they join right here into one piece with a hole with a screw holding it. So what happens over time, like when you bend a teaspoon over and over again, it breaks, and either this spring will break or this will break right where it joins the piece here. Now, all traditional old Western style single action revolvers are all designed the same way, pretty much. Whether it's a Uberti, an original old Colt from the 1800s, if you're lucky enough to own one, they all break down all the time. It's a common occurrence. It has nothing to do with the quality of the pistol. It might reflect a little bit on the quality of the metal used for the spring. That I will not argue. But like Wolf Springs, for example, they have a Y spring that's actually 2 wires instead of a flat spring. They last a lot longer, but the drawback is you get like a really hair trigger. Easier to misfire, or negligent fire, I should say. So you have to know what you're doing. But that being said, when you do stuff like fanning, when you're shooting, which is you hold the trigger down and you just keep fanning and rotating the cylinder, like in the Westerns, you can do that. You can't do that with this one. You cannot fan. You have to be very deliberate. And that already is starting to hurt. So for the traditional Western style, this is the best way to go. I shoot this one 5 to 10 times more than I shoot this one. And it's just, I like this one better. It's not the better pistol. It's not designed better. It's designed by beer drinking Billy Bob. But I had to bend the front sight over to sight it. And that's the other thing. You see the hammer is in the way of the front sight on this. So the only way you can sight it is to cock it. So if you want to take a look downrange, you have to put it on half cock, which is a safety. It won't fire, but I wouldn't trust that either because the tooth of that trigger is sitting against the tooth in the hammer, and these parts do wear out. Even on a high quality single action Army, you shouldn't trust that to always operate. So that's my opinion on these. I think the rifling in the barrel quality is better on the Wrangler. It's more accurate. I don't know what the rate of twist are between the two. I just know from shooting it that this is more accurate. I can plink within an inch or two at 30 yards on a metal steel target. This I cannot. It's good, but it's not as good a grouping as you get with the Wrangler. So this is better made, better designed, blah, 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 mathematically, blah, blah, blah. But fun factor, this is what I like to shoot. So I hope some of this helps you. And this cylinder pin is real basic, like they used to have. And the ejector rod is like they used to have. it feels sloppy, loose. This doesn't. This is better made. Everything's tight. The tolerances are tight. Everything's perfect. The Ruger Wrangler is perfection. This is glorious, beautiful imperfection. And I hope you understand where I'm coming from on that. There's no transfer bar safety. That's a clever design here. The loading gate is loose. It's worn out. It's as tightened as it's going to get. It sits inside a pocket in the frame. Now, this used to be color cased hardened, and it wore off very quickly. So now it's just an aluminum looking frame. And so the pluses are also that this has many more customization options available. You can buy this trigger group down here. Not the trigger group, but the trigger guard part, this metal part of the frame. You can get a bird heads design. They do sell that now on Heritage, I believe. You can also shoot 22 Magnum if you get the Magnum cylinder, which I've not seen one for this yet. There might be one. If there is, leave me a comment. I don't frequent the Ruger Wrangler website too often. One, because if they did have parts for sale, which I don't think they do, Ruger charges much more money than they need to, in my opinion. And they overcharge for, like, I have a Ruger Mini 14. The magazines are $55 for a 30-round magazine. I managed to find a couple locally for $31 new. So their website and stuff, their prices are up there. And they don't have everything you need. They don't have as much of a choice for grips. But the Heritage, they have everything on their website pretty much. You can buy cylinders with engravings in them, different designs. You can buy the 22 Magnum cylinder. You can buy a 9-shot cylinder, which I'm going to make a video for that. If you want to go with a 9-shot cylinder, you need to change the pawl or the hand spring inside. Uses the same flat spring, but the pawl itself, the arm, is different because of the timing of a 9-shot cylinder. But I do have a Heritage Rough Rider that had a 6-inch barrel that I took the 9-shot cylinder out in that hand, and I swapped them over to a regular shorter Heritage to make a 9-shot Heritage. So I was planning on making a video on that too, to explain how that's done. But it can be done if you find the pawl, the correct hand inside the handspring. Uses the same flat spring. So the replacement flat spring that they sell on the Heritage website, which is my point, will fit this 6-shot, and it will also fit the 9-shot if you manually insert the rolled end of the pin into the pawl and then reinstall it. And if you don't know what any of that stuff is, I apologize. I don't have time to explain it. We're already at 23 minutes. So I guess that's all I have to cover on this. I really just, one is not better than the other, is my point. Better designed, better fun for me. Maybe that's better fun for you. Maybe you think this is a paperweight, piece of junk. You always got to fix it, blah, blah, blah. That's all true. But I like that. That's old school. That's how they were done. And I have a Uberti 357 Magnum, 38 Special, 38 Short Colt, Long Colt. And it has the same problem. I've had to replace springs in that too. Not as often as this, but I shoot this a lot more. So stands to reason, 22 LRs are cheaper. You can go buy a box of 500 for $35, $40 and go have fun. And so I guess that's it. I just want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on these two pistolas. They are pretty cool. So if you like them, go get them. Both of them are cheap. This one's a little bit more, maybe $70 more. But it's well worth the money if you're looking for quality. So enjoy. Bye-bye.